Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Manchester United have done the unthinkable, bouncing back from a 2-goal deficit to knock PSG out of the UEFA Champions League. How did United do it? Where did PSG go wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to briefly break down how Manchester United knocked PSG out of Europe. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we're going to break down the first half, see how United looked to approach the game, where they were able to find advantages, and how PSG were able to also cause United some problems. Then move to the second half, see how both sides look to react to the way that they approached the game in the first half, and then see how United were able to finish it off. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at PSG, more of a 3-4-2-1 to start the match. Mbappe just ahead of Di Maria and Draxler, out in the wing-back roles, Juan Bernat and Dani Alves, and in midfield, Verratti and Marquinhos. Then we move to Manchester United, more of a 4-4-2. Lukaku and Rashford up front, out in the wider areas, Ashley Young and Andreas Pereira, and in midfield, they went with Fred and Scott McTominay. So now let's get to the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game, and how Manchester United started so well. So when we look at Manchester United traveling to PSG, one of the key talking points was the amount of key players that Manchester United were missing, but Solskjaer's decision to move to more of a 4-4-2 was pivotal here, and he had a game plan. First things first is that he was trying to ensure that Marquinhos and Verratti were unable to dictate the tempo of the play. United didn't really look to press from the front as often, because when they did, even if they had Fred or McTominay, more so McTominay, dropping off a bit deeper, two-step to Verratti, they still had 4v3 there. And even if Fred moved to Marquinhos, they still had the numerical advantage. So what they often did was that they did drop off into their shape. And what was key here was the manner in which they went about their business in stopping Marquinhos and in stopping Verratti. What they often did was that they had Rashford and they had Lukaku sitting in front of them to block off passing lanes into them. And what would happen was that Fred and McTominay would step closer to ensure that they did create a box around them. So there was no real way to get passes into them. And if they did want the ball, Verratti would have to move over to the left channel. Marquinhos would have to move wider as well. But PSG struggled to get those two really dictating the tempo of the game and creating chances from deeper positions. That was how they went about it. And that's where the PSG struggled initially. So a lot of their play did have to go out into the wider areas. And when we look into those wider areas, what we do see now is you have Di Maria and Draxler sitting off a bit narrow in deeper positions just in behind Mbappe. Mbappe was occupied by Lindelof and Smalling. When we look at Di Maria, there was two movements that we would get from him. One would be drifting out to a wider area, which would push Eric Bailly into that zone as he was playing as a makeshift right back, and that would force Bernat and Ashley Young to be in battle there. But sometimes we would see him drop off into more of a narrow position ahead of Bailly, and Young would pick him up, and then you would have Bailly step out to Bernat, and that's kind of how they were going about things there. So they were trying to stop that side, but that side was more direct. You had Bernat trying to break in behind, Di Maria on some occasions trying to break in behind, but Di Maria could also drift wide, deliver crosses, or run at Eric Bailly. On the opposite flank, it was a bit different. You had Dani Alves, who was engaged in a battle with Luke Shaw, because on one side there, you didn't have Bailly really pushing forward. So there was no real threat for Bernat, which is why it could be a bit more adventurous. And even if Bailly pushed forward, they were looking to obviously close him down quickly, because he doesn't offer you that attacking threat from a fullback role. On this side, it was Shaw against Alves, and Shaw was often always getting out to him if Pereira wasn't. But the problem here was that both of these players do like to cut in. Draxler struggled throughout because he was often occupied in this position here in a narrow half space, and that is where United were able to box him in. You had Pereira and Fred just ahead of him, and then just in behind him, Lindelof and Shaw, and he struggled to create or really have any significant impact on the game. He often had to drop off a bit deeper to get on the ball, move out to the opposite flank, but Draxler, in terms of penetration, creativity, guile in the final third, wasn't very prominent Alves' crosses from deep was the only thing really going for them down that right-hand side. But when you look at how both the wings were played, you would have to think that perhaps they would want Draxler and Di Maria to switch so they can have a bit of a balance. So that if you have Draxler looking to cut in, you could have Bernat keep the width wide. And if you have Alves looking to tuck in, you could have Di Maria sticking wide as well and offering more of a direct threat with his crosses. But that wasn't the case here. So their attack was a bit lopsided because they had a lot down the left-hand side, nothing down the right, nothing in central areas. And then when you look at the way that Mbappe looks to play his game, it's more of a counter-attacking game. He needs space to run at defenders, and he really struggled to have an impact. Chris Smalling was superb in terms of last-ditch tackles and last-ditch clearances, but Mbappe really did struggle for service and didn't really offer anything there. And United's shape does deserve credit for keeping it compact and keeping it narrow. But when we look to how United looked to create chances in the opening half, what we ended up seeing was that PSG were filled with errors, mostly down the right-hand side in Carrere. But what happened here was that they looked to target these areas out in the wider positions because they know that Kimpembe and Carrere did really struggle in the first leg here, making mistakes, and they were very nervy. And that was why you have Rashford and you have Lukaku who could break into those channels based off the fact that Bernat and Dani Alves were positioned so high. And we look to the opening minutes, it's just Rashford pressing Carrere, and he ends up playing a pass that is wayward into the path of Thiago Silva, but Lukaku gets onto it, is able to break on goal, round Buffon, and then place his effort into the net. Shortly after that, you have De Gea punt a ball into that right channel beyond Carrere, and you have Rashford, who is a few yards behind him, able to win the ball off of him and look to break forward. But that just goes to show how he's able to use his pace to cause the right center back a few issues, and that was kind of how they were going about their business in that regard. Later on, we did see the ball punted from Bailly around Kimpembe for Lukaku, but Kimpembe was able to clear those lines as well and ensure that no danger was caused down that left-hand side. Later on, McTominay breaking forward, playing a misplaced pass, but Carrere slips and Rashford's able to skip past him. And when he skips past him, you have Thiago Silva wary to break forward because you have Lukaku bringing into the box. Kimpembe is not looking to come across because actually Young is, so you have Verratti coming across. However, when Rashford delivers his cross through that 6-yard box, no one else attacks it. So that's another opportunity that they do waste. The goal that they do score to put them up 2-1 does see, shockingly, Bailly skip past Di Maria and drop it off to Andreas Pereira, who is more narrow towards the right-hand side, and he switches play to Rashford, and this is just a poor mistake here from Gigi Buffon. A shot from distance that he should comfortably save. He loses it, and it falls in the path to Lukaku, who is able to fire his side ahead. And then the final opportunity that we do get, again down that right-hand side, this is Lukaku now, and what happens is that you have Shaw getting the ball and Alves stepping to him, and what happens? He plays the ball into the path to Lukaku with Carrere tight on him, and Lukaku is able to spin him and break forward, but his second touch is poor, and Thiago Silva is able to come across. So although United didn't create a significant amount of chances or have a sustained amount of pressure against this PSG backline, in transition, they knew where to attack, and that was outside of the wide center backs because Rashford and Lukaku were looking to use their pace and their direct threat to cause them some problems. And based off the way that they pressed, they were able to get that opening goal. And based off a goalkeeping error from Gigi Buffon and Lukaku's persistence, they were able to get 2 away goals. So with that being said, we break down what United did good without the ball and how they were able to create chances and score goals. So now let's look to PSG because they did sustain possession for long, lengthy periods, and let's see how they were able to cause United some issues. So when we break down PSG's chances in the first half, we have to go back to the fact that United's shape was superb in terms of marking out their ability to play through the central areas. So when we look at their opening opportunities, we knew that a lot of it had to stem from wide areas. Kimpembe Bernat and Di Maria key down the left-hand side, Dani Alves pivotal down the right. When we look to the first opportunity, is Kimpembe stepping forward because, like I said, the central forwards were tasked with blocking off passes to Verratti and Marquinhos, and he slides the ball to the right of McTominay for Di Maria ahead of Bailly. And what happens there is that sometimes we would see Ashley Young drop into the back four and make it a back five when Bernat was looking to push forward. But what happens here is that with Bailly kind of ahead of Di Maria is able to slide the ball across Ashley Young for Bernat breaking in, and he delivers a cross through the box that just misses Mbappe and goes out. But that was a great opportunity to show the balance that Di Maria and Bernat had and their ability to target that left side. Shortly after that, we did see them overload that side with Di Maria coming across to deliver a pullback for Mbappe, but Smalling came across to make the difference there. Shortly after that, Kimpembe pushing forward again. This time, Bernat holding the width on that left touchline. Kimpembe slides it out to him. Young comes across to close, but we see Di Maria from a narrow position again on that left side, running in behind Bailly to get the poked ball into the left channel, and he instantly flashes his cross through the box, and what happens there is that it falls to Dani Alves breaking into that space, and he pulls it back for Mbappe, but again, Chris Smalling makes the difference, and Chris Smalling was pivotal, and that's just a nutshell or small sample size of how good he was in this game, denying Mbappe space in the box. Shortly after that, we get the build up to the goal. It's Mbappe staying coming from an offside position back onside. Dani Alves close by Pereira, and he wraps the ball around Pereira and Shaw. What we end up seeing here is Mbappe darting into that right half space, and as he does that, you have Fred and you have Smalling coming across, but he instantly fires his cross through the box, and Bailly switches off, and it ends up falling to Bernat, who taps his effort into the net. Later on, down that left-hand side again, we see Di Maria skip past Bailly with ease as he receives a pass down that left channel, clips the ball to the far post that is over Shaw, who misjudges it, falls to Dani Alves, lashes his shot over the net. In the opening 20 minutes, PSG were running United rampant down both flanks, and it didn't just stop there. Shortly after that, ball switched out to Dani Alves, closed by McTominay. He wraps the ball around McTominay and Shaw, and we see Mbappe dart into that right half space to lash his shot into side netting. But like I said, both sides are really making the difference, and Dani Alves wasn't done there, because shortly after that, diagonal switched out to Dani Alves. Again, Pereira steps forward, and this is really pivotal to kind of show how good PSG were in terms of the movement in the opening stages. What you have there is Shaw and Lindelof holding on that left-hand side, possibly because Draxler's there. What we end up seeing is that Mbappe, for the first time, moves out to the left-hand side near Bailly, and Smalling leaves Bailly with Mbappe just to come across, but that's when you see Di Maria making a dart in between Smalling to take him out of the play, and that opens up space for Mbappe, and Dani Alves locates that cross into Mbappe, who drops it off to Di Maria, but with Mbappe taken out of the play and Young not tracking, Bernat's able to break in again, and Di Maria slides it to him, and he fires a shot on goal that David De Gea does save. Well, like I said, within those opening 20 minutes, PSG could have put the tie to bed, but it allowed Solskjaer to make a change. Dalot came on for Eric Bailly, and now United looked much more secure down that right-hand side. Two natural right-sided players. Young is very good in 1v1 situations. He moved to right back. Dalot offers you the energy that Young probably couldn't offer you for large stretches of this game, and that Bailly wasn't giving you with his ability to push forward. So with that being said, Bernat and Di Maria's threat was stifled once Dalot came on, and that was pivotal for United because the left-hand side is where they were struggling, and Dalot being able to push forward did offer them more attacking verve down that side, an ability to kind of alleviate some pressure. And towards the end of the half, we saw Dalot run at Bernat, break into that right half space and pull it back, that for Verratti breaking into the box, and he almost guided the ball into his own net. When you break down the first half as a whole, we look at both sides. United United shape superb, clogging spaces in central midfield, denying PSG's midfield the ability to play forward and stifling Draxler down that right channel, and they were able to cause PSG a threat in those wide channels through Rashford and Lukaku running at Career and running at Kimpembe, whereas PSG, although they were stifled in the central of the pitch, they also were attacking down wider areas, but Solskjaer was able to stop that threat shortly around the half-hour mark. So with that being said, now let's get to the second half, see if anything changed and how United were able to kill off the tie. PSG continued to push on for a goal in the second half. We saw them push the wing backs forward. Draxler was dropping off a bit deeper, and sometimes it did feel like a 3-5-2, but PSG were struggling to create chances for Mbappe. Down the right-hand side, we had Dani Alves and Draxler delivering crosses that were overhit, and no one was really getting to. So PSG had to make a change at some point. However, it was United who made the change first, following Lukaku getting hurt, and they ended up moving more to a 5-4-1 under Solskjaer's instructions, based off the fact that they were very worried down the wider areas that their fullbacks were stuck with the wing backs pushing forward. So what we ended up having now was Luke Shaw moving to left wing back to deal with Dani Alves, Ashley Young moving into right center back, Delot moving to right wing back to deal with Juan Bernat. And like I said, you kind of had Draxler dropping off a bit deeper, but eventually they weren't really creating any chances. So we ended up seeing Tuchel move to Paredes going into midfield, and we saw also Meunier come on. So what happened there is that Meunier came on and he moved to right wing back. We had Marquinhos drop into right center back for Carrera, and we had Paredes and we had Dani Alves move into midfield with Marco Verratti. And from there, we saw a few chances. We saw Dani Alves find Mbappe running off Smalling to clip the ball over Lindelof, and he was able to hold it up, link play with Alves, and then see Mbappe spin off him, but his cross was cleared. We saw Alves and Di Maria slide balls into Meunier, who was running off Luke Shaw, but both of his crosses were also cleared in the box by Smalling and Young, and down from an overlap with Di Maria, we saw him also break forward and force De Gea into a save. But PSG moved to a 3-5-2. They had Mbappe and Di Maria up front, but we're still struggling to create chances. And United, like I said, did react to that, moving to more of a 5-4-1, and what the reason for the 5-4-1 was based off the fact that they had the wing backs higher, so there was space for Rashford to break into if you wanted to run at Carrera and now run at Marquinhos, and there was a presence out in wide areas to protect the wing backs if they needed help. So that was kind of how they were going about their business. Eventually, we did see Chong go into midfield for Pereira, and we saw Rashford move up front, but besides that, PSG struggled to create chances despite having majority of the possession. Their best chance saw Verratti from a deeper position slide the ball between Fred and McTominay for Dani Alves, who then slid Mbappe in after it deflected off Lindelof, and he rounded the keeper, unable to get a shot that Smalling poked the ball into Bernat, who hit the post. Eventually, United were able to win the tie from a spot kick in the dying moments of the second half. But when you break down the game as a whole, it was a very strange game. PSG played United off the park in the opening 20 minutes, but United, we have to give them credit for sticking in the game with so many players missing and eventually pouncing on PSG's mistakes to get the result that they needed to move on to the quarterfinals. But let me know what you guys think. Is this the end of an era for PSG? And what about Manchester United? How far can they go in this tournament? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.